All right, let's jump right into this explainer. You know, when we think of Argentina, we instantly picture those iconic blue and white stripes, the roaring stadiums, and absolute legends lifting the World Cup. But today, we're coming at this passion from a totally different angle. We're asking not just how Argentina plays football, but how they speak it. Because to really understand Argentina's complex history, we've got to look at football not just as a game, but as this profound cultural and political language. Over there, football isn't just some weekend pastime. It's a deeply intricate dialect. It reflects the nation's soul, its struggles, its creativity, and its deepest visions. I mean, with something like 80% of Argentines following the sport, this is a language spoken by practically everybody. We're going to be using Tom Williams' absolutely fantastic book, Do You Speak Football, alongside some historical data to literally flip through a dictionary of Argentine football. We'll explore how every single term unlocks a different piece of the national identity. You'll see how words born on dusty street corners and inside massive stadiums give us a totally unfiltered look into the heart of a country. Let's kick things off with a potrero. So originally, this was just a word for the prairies where gauchos grazed livestock. But in football, the potrero is the dusty urban wasteland, the vacant city lots where the country's greatest players first learned to just survive on their wits. It's this eternal, lawless playground. We're not talking about manicured grass or structured academy drills here. It's about chaotic, overcrowded games on baked earth, or you either learn to be slippery or you lose. Simple as that. And out of that potrero emerges a really central character in our dictionary, the pibe. Back in 1928, a famous writer described the pibe as this highly romanticized street urchin. Dirty face, a mane of rebellious hair, intelligent trickster eyes, and just a rag ball at his feet. The pibe relies purely on trickery to win. He's the ultimate symbol of working-class ingenuity, perfectly personified by icons like Diego Maradona, who, fittingly enough, was literally nicknamed the Golden Kid. Which brings us straight to La Nuestra, or Our Way. When British expats brought football to Argentina in the 1800s, it was very much a game of muscular strength and long balls. Well, La Nuestra was a massive cultural rebellion against that British style. It favored something deeply expressive, creative, and authentically Argentine. We're talking short passes, individual expression, and a certain mischievous guile. The feeling is that once you lose that style, you've basically lost your footballing soul. This uniquely Argentine flair is so legendary, it actually changed global football vocabulary forever. Take the Gol Olimpico. In 1924, an Argentine player named Cesario Unzari scored directly from a corner kick against the reigning Olympic champions, Uruguay. The rules had literally just been changed to allow this, and the move was so audacious, so memorable, that even today, all across Latin America, scoring directly from a corner is still called an Olympic goal. But hey, the language of Argentine football isn't all unity and flair. It's also defined by intense division. If La Nuestra brings the country together, this next word completely tears it apart. It's the Super Clásico, the insanely passionate derby between Argentina's two biggest, most successful clubs, Boca Juniors and River Plate. It is an event that carries just an incredible amount of cultural weight and high drama. It's a classic story of a shared origin fracturing into a fierce class divide. Both clubs actually started out in the exact same working-class neighborhood by the Docklands, but then, in 1925, River Plate moved to a wealthier district, earning themselves the nickname Los Millonarios, the Millionaires. Meanwhile, Boca Juniors stayed put, holding tight to their working-class roots and their nickname Los Zenitses. That split established a bitter ideological contrast that still captivates 80% of the country today. And the numbers totally back up the scale of this rivalry. Over a century of explosive and sometimes pretty violent encounters, Boca Juniors maintains just a razor-thin edge. Out of 265 total matches, Boca has 93 wins to River's 88, along with 84 draws. It's just as tightly contested on the pitch as it is passionately fought in the stands. But here's the thing. This kind of intense national passion rarely stays just on the pitch. It frequently gets hijacked as a political tool. The politicization of the sport really took off with President Juan Perón in the 1940s. He masterfully wove football into state propaganda, using it to project an image of national pride, social mobility, and unity. He even went so far as to control sports media to make sure his populist messaging was delivered right alongside the match reports. Fast forward to the 1970s, and things take a much, much darker turn. General Jorge Rafael Videla's military dictatorship seized power in 1976 and then used the 1978 World Cup, which Argentina was hosting, to project this mask of strength and unity to the rest of the world. Now, at the time, there was widespread suspicion of state interference, especially around the seemingly miraculous 6-0 win over Peru that Argentina absolutely needed to reach the final. Legend has it that political deals were struck behind closed doors to guarantee the result, which definitely raised global eyebrows. The reality of this era is a horrifying paradox. Videla used the tournament as a highly calculated distraction from his so-called dirty war. So while millions were swept up in the footballing spectacle, cheering in the stadiums, thousands of political opponents were secretly being kidnapped and murdered. Unbelievably, the Naval Mechanics School, which was a notorious torture center where thousands were processed, was located a mere 1,000 meters from River Plate Stadium. Prisoners could actually hear the roar of the crowds while enduring absolute horrors. And you've got to remember, the players themselves were caught right in the middle of this massive state machinery. Leopoldo Luque, a striker for that 1978 team, poignantly said years later, "With what I know now, I can't say I am proud of my victory, but I didn't realize. Most of us didn't. We just played football." That political manipulation left the 1978 victory as a deeply complicated, painful chapter in Argentine history. It turned a moment of sporting triumph into a really dark shadow over the nation's conscience. Coming out of that complex history and trauma, you see the birth of two entirely opposite coaching philosophies that still dominate the country's tactical vocabulary today. On one side, you have Menotismo, named after Cesar Luis Menotti, the idealistic coach of that '78 team, who believed football's main purpose was to bring joy to the masses. On the flip side is Billardismo, named after Carlos Bilardo. This is anti-football, a ruthless, cynical, highly pragmatic style where winning at all costs is literally the only thing that matters. But honestly, regardless of whether a coach leans towards idealism or pragmatism, the absolute beating heart of the Argentine system is always the enganche. Translating literally to the hook, this is that mythical playmaking number 10. Their entire job is to dictate the flow of the game, setting the rhythm and seamlessly linking the midfield to the attack. They are the true tactical manifestation of La Nuestra, the creative brain of the team. And what's the ultimate weapon of the enganche? It's the gambetta. This is a mesmerizing, jinking, weaving style of dribbling. Fun fact, the term actually comes from gaucho literature, referring to the weird, elusive running motion of an ostrich. Players like Diego Maradona and Lionel Messi famously used the gambetta to navigate the pitch, leaving defenders totally flat-footed, and essentially turning the sport into high art. Speaking of Maradona, he gave us what is probably the single most famous phrase in all of football history, the hand of God. He coined this after he brazenly punched the ball into the net against England in the 1986 World Cup quarterfinal. When reporters asked him afterward how he scored, he cheekily replied that it was a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. But there is a much heavier context to that famous quote. Maradona viewed that controversial match against England not just as a quarterfinal, but as direct retribution. He later admitted it was a form of revenge for the 649 Argentine lives lost during the Falklands War just 4 years earlier. Once again, it's a perfect example of how in Argentina, the language of the sport is hopelessly entangled with geopolitics and real-world history. Finally, as we trace this constant line between passion, politics, and power, we have to define the barra bravas. Translating roughly to wild gangs, these are hardcore, violently organized supporter groups that operate kind of like mafias. They first popped up in the 1950s and over the decades have become deeply embedded in the institutional fabric of Argentine football, exerting massive, undeniable control over the very clubs they claim to love. These groups are the living, breathing proof of the ongoing politicization of Argentine football today. I mean, they don't just cheer. They earn very comfortable livings from merchandising, they control stadium parking, and they rake in cash from black market ticket sales. By maintaining close, protective ties with club directors, politicians, and the police, they use violence and intimidation to keep a lucrative stranglehold on the terraces. The shadows of state and power still loom very large over the pitch. So, from the beautiful poetry of the Potrero and the Gambetta to the incredibly dark reality of state manipulation and the barra bravas, Argentine football truly is a dialect of extreme contrasts. It's a language of survival, of breathtaking artistry, and of bitter conflict. So I'll leave you with this thought. If you can learn to speak the language of Argentine football, what other deeply hidden cultural truths about a nation might you uncover?